The Dragon Queen Sarathia was never supposed to return home that day. She had left her mountain palace under strong protection, trusting her elite guards, healers, and caretakers to watch over her newborn triplets. The babies were special. They were dragon children born deaf. And because of that, they needed constant care. Soft vibration signals, warm light patterns, and calming breath touch from trained dragon nurses. No one in the palace expected her to come back early, not even her enemies. But Sarathia felt something wrong in her heart as she flew through the dark clouds above the valley. She felt a strange, cold pulse moving through the sky, a pulse that did not belong to any of her people. Dragons trusted their instincts more than anything. That instinct now screamed danger. Her wings folded, and she dropped quickly from the clouds, landing on the high balcony of her palace with a loud thud that echoed through the empty halls. The sound should have brought guards running, but no one appeared. The silence felt heavy, like the palace was holding its breath. Sarathia stepped forward slowly, her sharp eyes scanning every shadow. She expected to hear the faint humming from the nursery crystals that helped calm her babies. Even though her children could not hear, the crystals were still used to create warm, glowing waves that soothed their sleeping bodies. But tonight, the crystals were off. There was no warm light leaking from the walls, only darkness waiting in every corner. It was wrong, all wrong, as she walked deeper into the palace. She felt the air grow warmer, almost like something had been moving inside these halls very recently. Her tail brushed across the floor, catching small pieces of dust that should not be there. The palace cleaning staff never allowed the halls to grow dusty. Something had disturbed the normal routine. She listened carefully. Dragons could sense vibrations through stone, and when she placed one clawed hand on the wall, she felt it again, a soft, slow rhythm, like breathing. Not dragon breathing, something lighter. Her heart tightened as she approached the nursery wing. The large door was slightly open. The caretakers were trained never to leave it open. She stepped closer with silent feet, her wings half open, ready to strike. Her instincts kept whispering danger, danger, danger. But mixed with danger was something else, confusion. Why was the air warm? Why did she feel a gentle pulse of vibration from inside the room? Her babies were deaf. They responded only to touch and vibration. Who was with them? Someone untrained could harm them without meaning to, with one slow breath. She pushed the nursery door open. The room was dim. Only a soft white glow coming from a single crystal left running in the corner. And then she froze. The sight in front of her made her forget her breath. A human Evan the palace janitor was standing in the center of the nursery with all 3 dragon babies in his arms. One baby was resting against his shoulder. The other 2 curled gently against his chest. They were calm, completely relaxed, their tiny wings folded softly as they slept. Their little claws wrapped around the fabric of Evan's uniform, as if holding on to him for safety. Evan, a simple human worker. Someone who swept the palace floors, cleaned windows, and rarely spoke to anyone. He was not trained for dragon child care. He should not have been near them, and yet Sarathia saw something impossible. Her deaf babies were responding to him. The smallest child, Lyra, pressed her head against Evan's chest. Feeling his heartbeat, another one, Kale, moved slightly as if adjusting to the gentle vibrations Evan created when he breathed. They were comfortable with him. They trusted him. This made no sense. Dragon babies almost never trusted humans. Sarathia did not attack, but her voice came out sharp. "Explain yourself." Evan jumped slightly, but he held the babies steady, making sure none of them woke or slipped from his arms. "My queen," he whispered, his voice shaking. "I didn't mean to break any rule." He spoke softly, his eyes full of fear, but also something else, protectiveness. The caretakers. They were gone when I came to clean. Gone? The word echoed in Sarathia's mind like thunder. Gone where? She demanded. Evan swallowed hard. I don't know, Your Majesty. The room was dark, and the babies were crying. They were shaking and scared. I couldn't leave them like that. Sarathia stepped closer. Her eyes glowed faintly, searching his face for lies. But she found only honesty. His body was warm, steady, and his arms were gentle yet firm. Her children felt safe with him. She could not understand why. But one thing became clear to her at that moment. Something terrible had happened in her palace. Something that forced a simple human janitor to protect royal dragon infants. The mystery deepened, the danger grew heavier, and Sarathia felt a single terrifying thought rise inside her mind. If the caretakers were gone, then someone else was inside the palace, someone dangerous enough to silence everyone. Evan had unknowingly stepped into the center of a storm, and Sarathia realized she might have returned home just in time, or far too late. Sarathia did not lower her guard, but she did step closer to Evan. Her eyes stayed fixed on the babies in his arms. They were still calm, still breathing slowly. Their small golden scales warmed under the gentle rise and fall of his chest. It was strange, too strange. Dragon infants trusted no one except their queen and their trained caretakers. But here they were, resting in the arms of a simple human janitor without fear. Something about Evan was different, even if he didn't know it. Tell me exactly what happened, Sarathia ordered. Her voice was quieter now, but still sharp enough to cut stone. Evan swallowed, trying not to shake. Your Majesty. When I came to clean the nursery hallway, I noticed the door was open. His voice trembled. But he kept talking. It's always closed. So I checked inside. The caretakers were gone. And the babies were shaking. They looked like they couldn't breathe. Sarathia's tail twitched. The thought of her infants gasping alone filled her with a cold fire. So you picked them up? She asked. Evan nodded. I didn't know what else to do. I thought they needed warmth. Or comfort. He looked down at the babies. They stopped crying the moment I held them. Sarathia looked closely at his hands. They were steady, his breathing slow and controlled. Almost too controlled for a normal human. Do you know anything about caring for deaf dragon infants? She asked. Evan shook his head quickly. No, my queen. I've only cleaned the nursery halls. That's all I do. Yet somehow, he held the babies exactly right, pressing them against the points where dragon children feel vibration best, supporting their fragile wings, keeping them close to his heartbeat. He didn't know the rules, but he followed them perfectly. It made no sense. One of the babies, Kale, moved slightly and pressed his cheek against Evan's chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Dragon infants used vibrations instead of sound, and for some reason, Evan's heartbeat pattern was calming to them. Sarathia narrowed her eyes. Show me your hands. Evan hesitated, then gently shifted the babies to one arm and held out his free hand. Sarathia hovered her claw above his skin, but didn't touch him. Dragon queens could sense energy through the air, and what she sensed now made her inhale sharply. A faint wave. A soft pulse. Something warm. Evan stepped back, confused. Did I do something wrong? She studied him. No human, but something inside you is not normal. Evan blinked fast. I don't understand, Sarathia said. Dragon infants respond to vibration patterns. They are born deaf. They feel the world through skin and heartbeats. Evan looked at the babies, his voice soft. Maybe they just needed someone. Sarathia shook her head slowly. Not someone. Someone who matches their vibration. Evan frowned. What does that mean? Sarathia answered quietly. It means you have something rare. Something humans do not usually have. Before Evan could process that, Sarathia walked around the nursery, inspecting every corner. The bedding was wrinkled, the crystals dimmed, and the scent of fear still hung in the air. She touched a broken scale on the floor. One of the caretakers must have lost it during a struggle. Evan watched her, still holding the babies with surprising ease. "Your Majesty," he said quietly. "The babies." They were shaking, like they were scared of something. Sarathia turned sharply. "Scared of what?" Evan hesitated, then pointed to the far wall. "When I first came in, I felt something strange, like something cold had been there." Sarathia walked to the wall and placed her claw against it. A faint echo of dark energy pulsed back. Not strong, but recent. Her eyes hardened. "A shadow presence," she whispered. Evan's eyes widened. "Shadow? Like an enemy?" Sarathia nodded once. "Perhaps dragons have enemies who move without sound. Perfect hunters against deaf infants." Evan held the children closer. "So they were in danger." Sarathia looked at him carefully. "Yes, and somehow you protected them without even knowing it." Evan shook his head. "I'm just a janitor. I don't have any special power." Sarathia's wings shifted slightly. "Yet you kept them calm when even trained caretakers sometimes fail." He looked down, confused. "I just held them close." Sarathia stepped closer again, her voice low. "Humans are weak in body, but sometimes strong in heart." Evan felt his face warm. "I only did what anyone would do," Sarathia corrected him sharply. "No, most would have run. You stayed." Evan didn't know what to say. He looked at the babies, their tiny claws curled in trust. "They needed me," he whispered. Sarathia watched him with a strange expression, something between suspicion and respect. Then Sarathia noticed something else. Evan's breathing pattern matched the natural calming rhythm mother dragons use. He was doing it without knowledge or training. Her eyes widened slightly. "Evan," she said slowly, "do you always breathe like that?" Evan blinked, confused again. "Breathe like what?" Sarathia pointed at his chest. "Like a dragon guardian." Evan looked terrified. I don't know what that means." Sarathia spoke in a cold, controlled voice. "It means you may be the only reason my children are alive right now." Evan tightened his arms around the babies protectively. "I'll keep them safe, my queen." Sarathia stared at him for a moment, then finally said, "You already have." But inside her heart, a new fear began to rise. If her children responded to a human, if the caretakers vanished without a trace, if dark energy was inside the nursery, then someone had planned something far worse than she imagined. And Evan was now part of a danger he did not understand. Sarathia moved through the nursery with slow, careful steps. Her wings stayed half open, ready to strike at any danger hiding in the shadows. Evan stood in the center of the room, holding the 3 dragon babies close to his chest. Their small bodies rose and fell softly with his slow breath. They were calm again. But the fear of what had happened still hung heavy in the air. The queen knew something terrible had taken place here, but she did not yet understand what or who had caused it. She walked to the fallen scale on the floor and picked it up. The scale shimmered weakly in the dim light, but the color told her everything. It belonged to one of the royal caretakers, a dragon nurse named Mylora. Loyal, gentle, and never careless, she would never leave the infants alone. Not even for a second. Sarathia felt a cold pain in her chest. If Mylora's scale was here, then something violent had happened, something powerful enough to stop her from crying for help. Evan watched the queen's expression tighten. "Your Majesty? Is that from one of your staff?" he asked quietly. Sarathia did not look up. "Yes," she said, her voice heavy. "This is a scale from Mylora. She was with my children when I left." Evan swallowed hard. Unsure how to respond, he looked at the babies again, feeling suddenly afraid for them. "Do you think she ran away?" Sarathia shook her head sharply. "No, she was loyal. She would die before abandoning the royal infants." Evan felt a cold shiver down his back. The idea of someone harming trained dragon caretakers felt unreal. Then, someone took them? He whispered. Saravia finally looked up at him, her eyes glowing like burning gold. Maybe, she said softly. Or worse. Maybe someone silenced them. She turned to the walls, running her claws across the stone surface. When her claw passed over the far corner, she froze. A faint mark burned deep into the stone caught her attention. It was almost invisible, but dragons could sense ancient energy symbols. Evan stepped closer. What is that? Saravia leaned in. A message, she whispered. The burned lines formed a simple but terrifying pattern. A warning, a claim, a promise of danger. Saravia read it aloud in a low voice. They want the babies. Evan felt his heart drop. The babies shifted slightly at his reaction. So he held them tighter. Who are they? He asked, struggling to keep his voice calm. Saravia whispered, Shadow Hunters. The name alone filled the room with tension. Evan had heard stories from other palace workers. Dark tales about creatures who moved without sound, saw without eyes, and hunted the weak, but he had never believed they were real. Until now, Saravia continued, Shadow Hunters feed on fear. They cannot hear. They cannot speak. They sense life through movement and trembling. Perfect predators for deaf dragon infants. Even felt sick. Why would they want these babies? Saravia turned to face him fully. Because they are royal heirs, she said. And because dragons with special abilities are always targeted, Evan looked at the tiny faces resting against him. Their fragile wings, their golden scales, their innocence. But how did they get inside the palace? He asked. Sarathia's jaw tightened. Someone let them in, she said. That is the only way they could have entered so deep without being seen. A traitor. Inside her home. Inside her trusted circle. The thought burned like fire in her chest. She stepped toward the nursery door and opened it slowly. The hallway was darker than before. Cold, silent, empty. Not even the wind moved. Stay inside the room, she ordered Evan. Do not move unless I say so. Evan nodded. Though fear tightened his throat, Saravia stepped into the hall, her claws dragging lightly on the floor as she searched for more signs. Broken pieces of crystal lay on the ground, faint scratches marked the walls, and dried drops of silver dragon blood trailed toward the lower corridor. She touched the blood, her eyes softened. This is from Lyris, the second caretaker. Evan gulped hard. So, both caretakers fought something? Saravia nodded. Yes, she said, and they fought hard, but the blood trail ended too quickly. Someone had cleaned it, or someone had dragged the caretakers away. She returned to the nursery after a few tense minutes, her silence heavier than her words. Evan watched her anxiously. What did you find? Saravia took a slow breath. Nothing good, she said. The palace was attacked. The caretakers tried to defend the infants. But they were taken or killed. Evan looked shocked. But why leave the babies alive? Saravia looked at him with deep, troubled eyes. Because they were waiting for something, she said. Or someone. Evan felt his chest tighten. Me? Saravia slowly nodded. Your vibration pattern calms them. Shadow hunters sense vibrations too. Your presence may have confused them. Evan blinked in disbelief. I protected them? Without knowing? Saravia answered. Yes, and now we must understand why. The babies stirred again, sensing the rising fear in the room. Evan rocked them gently, and they relaxed once more. Saravia watched this with deep confusion. You are not trained, she whispered. You are not a warrior. Or a guardian. Evan nodded quickly. I know. I'm just a janitor. Saravia stepped closer. No, Evan, she said softly. Tonight you are something more. But the fear remained. The danger remained. And the truth was becoming clear. Someone inside the palace wanted the royal infants. Someone powerful enough to remove all caretakers. And someone who now knew a human janitor was protecting them. Part 3 ended with one chilling thought rising in Sarathia's mind. If the enemy returns, they will come for him next. The nursery felt too quiet, too still, like the air itself was waiting for something to happen. Evan held the 3 dragon babies close, their tiny hearts beating softly against him. Sarathia stood near the nursery entrance, her wings half open, her claws sharp and ready. She could feel a heavy pressure settling over the palace, a pressure that only meant one thing: danger was coming back. A sudden vibration crawled through the stone floor, just for a second, but strong enough that Sarathia felt it in her bones. She snapped her head toward the hallway. "Stay behind me," she commanded sharply. Evan nodded, fear tightening his chest. He moved back until his shoulders touched the warm wall, keeping the babies protected with both arms. Another vibration came. Stronger this time, the floor trembled, the air grew colder. The glow crystal in the corner of the nursery flickered weakly. Evan swallowed hard, whispering, "What is that?" Sarathia did not answer at first. She stepped slowly into the doorway, her voice low and dangerous. "They're here." The hallway suddenly darkened, as if a shadow had swallowed the light. A thin layer of black fog slid across the floor like water. Moving with silent purpose, Evan's breath stopped. He had never seen anything so unnatural. Sarathia growled, "Shadow hunters?" The fog thickened, rising like smoke until shapes began forming inside it. Tall, thin, twisted shapes with glowing white cracks where eyes should be. Their bodies rippled like cloth in the wind, even though there was no wind at all. They didn't walk, they glided toward the nursery. Silently, slowly, like death drifting closer with every second. Evan felt the dragon babies stiffen in his arms. Their small claws curled tightly into his clothes. Even without hearing, they sensed the danger in the air. "Your Majesty," Evan whispered, voice shaking. "They're coming straight for us." Sarathia spread her wings wide, filling the doorway with her massive shape. "They want the infants," she growled. "They always take the young first." Evan held the babies tighter. "Why?" Sarathia's eyes burned. "Because royal dragon infants carry rare powers. If the hunters control them, they control the future, without warning." One shadow hunter lunged forward, its form stretching like a spear of darkness. Sarathia swung her claws, slicing through the creature. For a moment it broke apart into smoke, but then it reformed behind her. Completely silent, Evan gasped, "They can heal?" Sarathia snarled, "They can reshape. The only way to stop them is to destroy their core." 3 more hunters slid forward, their bodies twisting unnaturally as they crawled up the walls and across the ceiling like spiders. Evan's knees trembled. He pressed his back harder against the wall, the babies crying silently into his chest. Sarathia roared and sent a blast of fire through the hallway. The flames hit 2 hunters, burning holes through their dark forms. But the third dodged and shot past her straight toward Evan. Evan's heart stopped. He turned his body, shielding all 3 babies with his arms. Bracing for impact, the hunter raised its thin, sharp arm, ready to strike at the weak human protecting the royal heirs. "No!" Sarathia roared. She threw herself across the room with incredible speed, slamming her body into the creature before it touched Evan. The force cracked the stone wall. The hunter dissolved into black smoke, but not fully. It began forming again, only steps away. Sarathia's breathing grew heavy. She was strong, but there were too many of them. And shadow hunters did not get tired, did not bleed, did not stop. Another one appeared behind her, and another slid from the ceiling, circling her like predators around a cornered animal. Evan watched helplessly, his heart pounding violently. "Your Majesty, there are too many," he cried. Sarathia answered through her teeth. "Keep the babies close. Their hearts follow your vibration. They stay calm because of you." Evan didn't feel calm at all, but he kept breathing slowly, forcing his chest to rise and fall in the pattern the babies understood. Their trembling softened slightly, even with death inches away. But the hunters sensed it. They turned toward him, their crack-like eyes glowing brighter. They understood that the human was stabilizing the infants. They understood he mattered. And now they wanted him first. 4 of them lunged at once. Not at the babies, but at Evan himself. Sarathia jumped forward, blocking 2 with her wings. Her claws tore through the 3rd, but the 4th slipped past her, sliding across the floor like living smoke. Evan shouted, stepping back, but there was nowhere to go. The hunter stretched its arm toward his chest, reaching for the babies under his arms. At the last second, Evan did the only thing he could. He dropped to the floor, curling his body around the infants. The hunter's strike hit the wall above him, cracking stone. Sarathia whirled around and blasted the creature with fire. This time she aimed directly at its core, a bright spark inside its chest. The creature shrieked silently and burst apart. For a moment, the room went quiet again. Only Sarathia's heavy breathing and Evan's shaking breaths filled the air. But the shadows in the hallway continued to move, regrouping, forming new shapes. Stronger ones, smarter ones. Sarathia looked back at Evan, sweat and ash on her scales. "We cannot stay here," she said. "More are coming." Evan nodded quickly. "Where do we go?" Sarathia opened her wings fully, a fire inside her eyes burning bright. "To the lower chamber," she said, "the strongest shield in the palace, and the last place the hunters want us to reach." Evan held the babies tightly, his heart hammering in fear, but he followed her, because now he understood the truth. He was no longer just a janitor. He was the last barrier between the royal heirs and the darkness hunting them. And the hunters were not finished, not even close. Sarathia led the way through the dark hallway, her wings stretched wide, her body tense and ready to protect. Evan followed closely behind, holding the 3 dragon babies against his chest. His arms burned from the weight, but he didn't loosen his grip. Not when the hunters were still behind them. Not when the babies needed him more than anything. Each step felt heavier than the last. The hallway twisted downward, deeper into the palace, toward the lower chamber, the safest place in the entire mountain fortress. But the shadows were not giving up as they moved. Dark shapes crawled across the ceiling and walls like living smoke, silently following, waiting. The babies trembled slightly, sensing the danger. Evan whispered soft breaths to calm them. His heartbeat kept a slow, steady rhythm. It was all he could give them, but it helped, Sarathia noticed. And her eyes softened for a moment. "You keep them steady," she whispered without turning. Evan breathed out. "I'm trying, my queen." They reached a large stone door covered in glowing symbols. Sarathia pressed her claw to the center, and the stone shifted open, releasing a warm golden light. "Inside," she commanded. Evan hurried through. The babies tucked safely within his arms. Sarathia followed and closed the heavy door behind them, sealing it with a bright flash of energy. For the first time since returning home, the queen allowed herself one slow breath. The chamber was calm and warm, with a gentle hum that reminded Evan of the soft vibrations the babies responded to. They relaxed instantly, curling closer into his chest. Sarathia watched them closely, her anger fading into something more thoughtful. "They trust you," she said, "more than they trust dragons." Evan sat on the soft floor, looking down at the 3 tiny faces. "I don't know why," he whispered. "I'm nobody." Sarathia moved closer, her large wings folding in. "No human should be able to calm dragon infants," she said. "Especially deaf ones. Their senses are different. Their world is different. Evan shook his head slowly. I just held them. That's all. Saradhya lowered her head, examining him as if searching for hidden truth. No, she said softly. It is not just holding. It is something deeper. She placed one claw near his chest, not touching, only sensing. Her eyes widened slightly. There, she whispered. Your heartbeat. It carries a special pattern. Evan blinked. A pattern? Saradhya nodded. Dragons use vibration to communicate with their deaf children. Only the closest family members can create the right pattern. Evan felt confused. But I'm not family. Saradhya studied him carefully. Humans do not usually have this ability, she said. But you. Your body creates the same calming frequency as a dragon guardian. Evan looked down at the babies, who curled tighter into his arms as if understanding the words. So? I was helping them without knowing how. Saradhya answered, yes, and that is why they survived. The hunters cannot sense your human vibrations, the same way they sense dragon fear. You confused them. Evan swallowed hard. I protected them? Saradhya nodded slowly. You saved them. Her voice held something rare respect. But then her wings tightened again, and her expression darkened. The walls shook as something struck the sealed door from outside. A loud, heavy bang echoed through the chamber. They followed us, Evan whispered. His voice breaking, Saradhya growled. They want the royal heirs. They will not stop, the babies whimpered, feeling the vibrations of danger. Evan held them tighter. What do we do now? Saradhya walked to the center of the room and placed both claws on the glowing floor symbols. Now we reveal the truth, she said. A golden wave rose from the ground, surrounding her. The chamber lights brightened until the room glowed like a small sun. Evan shielded the babies with his arms. But they relaxed again, calm in his warmth. Saradhya closed her eyes and allowed the chamber's ancient magic to read the vibrations of the room. The light shifted, forming shapes in the air memories, carved into magic. The scene replayed like a silent film. The caretakers defending the babies, shadow hunters breaking inside, the traitor dragon opening the palace gates. And then another vision appeared, one Evan didn't expect. A human child, small and frightened, taken from another world long ago. His body glowing faintly with a rare frequency. The same frequency Evan unknowingly produced. The chamber whispered the truth. A rare genetic gift existed in a small number of humans, one that could bond with dragon infants. Evan stared, shocked. This is me? Saradhya watched the vision fade. You are part of a rare line of humans, she said softly. Humans who were once guardians of dragon young, long before our worlds separated. Evan felt his chest tighten. So, I'm connected to them? Saradhya nodded. In a way deeper than blood. Another loud bang hit the chamber door. Cracks spreading across the stone. The hunters were close to breaking in. Evan stood, holding the babies firmly. Tell me what to do, he said. Fear shaking, but determination stronger. Saradhya looked at him with burning eyes. Stand with me, she said. The infant's trust in you strengthens my power. Together we protect them. Evan took a deep breath, matching the calming rhythm the babies knew. Saradhya spread her wings, filling the room with golden light. The chamber power surged stronger than ever. The door cracked open, and the moment the hunters broke through, Saradhya unleashed a blast of pure dragon energy. Evan shielded the babies. The hunters screamed silently and dissolved under the combined force of queen and human. When the light faded, the palace was silent again. The danger was gone. The hunters were defeated. Evan sank to his knees, exhausted but still holding the babies safe. Saradhya stood over him, watching him with deep respect. Tonight, she said softly, You became more than a janitor. She lowered her head, a gesture dragons gave only to equals. You became the guardian of my children. Evan looked at the babies, then at the queen. I'll protect them, he whispered. Saradhya nodded once. And I will protect you, because the truth was clear now. His hidden gift had saved the royal heirs, and the world would never be the same again.